Hey traders, welcome to Charts and Coffee. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope everyone is doing wonderful. We have that CPI release that came out already. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek at what we have on the economic calendar. Remember, gang, the hot zones that we're still really very much waiting on. Certainly, we have FOMC meeting minutes, which was actually a dud. We have the CPI that came out yesterday. And then today we had the PPI that came out today. Again, these would fall under the category of inflation metrics, things that we're looking at to understand how the Federal Reserve is going to communicate what it is that they're going to do based on the data that they have. That's why we care, right? Do I care what a producer price index is? I really don't. But I do care because they do. And the only macro that matters, has ever really only ever mattered, is what is the Federal Reserve going to do with rates and what is their monetary policy? How are they communicating their outlook? And so that's why we track what we track. So 8:30 hot zone, we have the 30-year bond auction at 1:01 Eastern today, and it's a pretty quiet day, remembering that we have the financials being released tomorrow. Let me take you on over to Trading Economics. Sometimes there's a sneaky little FOMC event that might be on this particular calendar that may not be seen on the Forex Factory. So good habit there. And then this time of year, gang, I make sure that I'm spending some time over here, over at Estimize. And I use my old StockTwits login for this. So I'll use StockTwits because this is a free site. It's free information. You can pay for more data, more analytics, but I used a free version of this, and it's fantastic. You can track the stocks that you want to track, and it's a really easy way to have the calendar right in front of you. So again, tomorrow, you can see here, JP Morgan, Bank of America on Tuesday, Netflix on Tuesday. We are coming into this full swing of earnings, which is its own set of hot zones. Now remember, when we go into earnings season, we're going to be dealing with more than ever the impact of high concentration weighting, and also even stocks that are not considered necessarily the heavyweights in the index of the sector because of the potential for outsized moves. Even a low percentage weighted stock in an index or a sector ETF can have a disproportionate effect. So we need to know, say, the top 10 or even the top 11. I pushed out to 11 stocks in each one of the sectors and indices. And you see that on the multi-chart that we use quite often in the sector secrets rooms. The main tide in the left-hand corner, that's the index or the sector, right? So the main tide, and then the individual boats, right? That's the way that I like to describe the weighting, right? Boats and tide. Okay, so moving on to, let's go ahead and jump. And I'm going to use TradingView again. We'll take a look at the TradingView charts as we progress through our show and questions. On the left, the red and green zones, gang, those are our hourly price movement ranges, or HPMRs, that I use for day trading. These are those volatility zones that we track for entries that we want to take, say on a 5-minute time frame, 2-minute time frame, just some time frame that we prefer to use where we know that by day's end, we're going to be flat. And on the right side, you can see there, we've got the daily price movement ranges on the daily time frame. There are a number of daily trends that are absolutely on my radar for DPMR entries. All right, so with all that being said, let's jump on into the questions. All right, and by the way, if you haven't noticed, I know it's a subtle thing, the Countdown Trader, if you're looking for supplemental articles, discussion, indicators, explainers, it's all there over at Countdown Trader. Shout out to Trish for putting those updates together twice a week. Super helpful in terms of trying to understand, okay, Rog, you use some concepts or maybe some lingo that I'm not familiar with. Where can I get familiar with them? You know, I'll always recommend checking out the free videos at the Simpler Trading YouTube channel that I do every Tuesday and Friday. and then also countdown trader. And between that, you get a really good idea of the kind of approach and tools that I use, the kind of philosophy that's wrapped around my trading for the past 30 years. Okay, gang, so let's jump on into it. Got a question from our free trading room. JR asks, when do I think UNG might be a buy again? I'll tell you what, JR, the way that UNG is going to move, which is going to be, obviously largely based on what natural gas futures are going to do. They are completely disconnected from the seasonals. In fact, those of you that get this week in the market, I talked a bit about what would be the next catalyst for Natty. And I'll tell you, JR, it's going to be weather. Right now, we're expecting a fairly mild summer. That's very bearish for natural gas demand. We had already a mild winter in terms of what expectations were. Very few, if no, heating degree day updates from the Energy Information Administration. So what does all that mean? We didn't expect a harsh winter, and we're not expecting a harsh summer. And really, that's just very bearish for demand. So when is it? When do I think? Not a clue, JR. I do know what we're looking for. We're looking for breaks above volume ledges. We're looking for breaks above the upper end of the daily price movement range. And likely those breaks will accompany some sort of weather or maybe geopolitical event affecting supply. All right. And that's just not right now something that seems to be shaping up. All right. Next up from our YouTube channel, Avi asked, do I still think zero date options 30% max loss? Because I don't do the zero dated option thing, Avi. Do I think? I don't know. I don't know if I've never talked about that. So I want to make sure there's no confusion. I don't prioritize zero dated options. That's not something I do. If someone out there is a fan of writing credit and you're trying to take advantage of that time decay, that natural depreciation that happens to an option really in an really accelerated way as it's getting ready to expire, that's great. Otherwise, any option, the time left to expiration for me is a function of what time frame am I trading and how much do I want to pay for the option. If I'm writing an option, that's a whole other thing, which I don't really like to do. If I'm buying calls and puts, if I'm a directional debit player, debit options, meaning I'm paying for an option, long call, long put, and I'm very much in favor of a certain direction. At that point, the only reason a zero dated option would even be of any use would be the lower cost associated with being a day trader of some option that's going to expire on the same day. So that's not anything I teach my friends. So, and I'm frankly not a fan of making the days to expiration part of the strategy or even the primary driver of the strategy. Yeah, definitely not my thing. All right. So next up, we have from our let's see, our trading room. Hey there, Earl. How does Fed policy inform my opinion about a trade in GE? Fed policy, Earl, really very little. So Federal Reserve policy, interesting question. So if I'm looking at the euro dollar, right, and I think that thing's going to be changing the symbol. So if I'm looking at the euro dollar futures, which should not be confused with the euro FX, one is the currency, and the GE, the euro dollar, is basically an interest bearing instrument. In other words, it's loosely what kind of interest does a US dollar or any foreign currency deposited in a European bank, what kind of interest does it collect? All right. So GE doesn't trade. It's, I believe, SR3, the bot's telling me. So I'm just pulling up GE because if you're on the and you can see here it's still trading, but they're gonna be phasing this out. But just so you can see the trend. Euro dollar futures continue to be in a downtrend, which means they are increasingly yielding a higher interest rate. And why would that be something I'd say I'm not really concerned about the FOMC? Well, the Fed doesn't set monetary policy for Europe, right? It's the European Central Bank. And the European Central Bank is still quite hawkish. In fact, just yesterday, there was chatter about whether or not there needs to be even a more aggressive approach to their current tightening cycle or their hiking, right? Tightening, hiking, same thing, cycle. And you could see the euro dollar continues to punch up to higher highs, which is something we've been talking about here in Charts and Coffee and also in the This Week in the Market newsletter. And that means that as the euro moves higher, more hawkish monetary policy from the European Central Bank, arguably on the precipice of a Fed pivot, so possibly a hold to a dovish pivot here in the US. And all that's going to keep the yield on the GE higher. In other words, the GE is going to keep moving lower and the euro moving higher. Remember, when a central bank is hiking, it's very bullish for what I like to call the stock of a country, which is their currency. So anytime you have a central bank that's favoring tightening, right? That's favoring higher rates. That's hawkish. That's going to be bullish for the currency and bullish for the interest rate. All right. So that's the way I look at that. Fed policy, not so much, but for sure what is going on with the ECB. So keep an eye on anytime Lagarde is speaking and any ECB member. All right. So thank you for the question, Earl. Very cool. All right. Next up is good morning. Good morning. Great to see everyone. And by the way, I did mention This Week in the Market, we've got our $7 trial out there. Gang, I will tell you this, for $7, you basically get 4 issues from me. Each issue's been anywhere from 13, 14, 15 pages, lots of graphs. So don't worry, it's not all TLDR, too long, didn't read. And if you're looking for, gosh, probably the best $7 education you can get on big picture macro from the basis of data-driven analysis, it will definitely be worth your time. All right, moving on. Kalwant asks, what are my thoughts on DOCN? Good growth company with cash flow. I'll tell you what, Kalwant, I'm a trader. If there is any good growth company, cash flow, any kind of optimism around the stock, I'll tell you what, I don't look at fundamentals. You might say, what? If you're investing, you don't? I absolutely do not. But here's why. Number one, I'm never going to understand and have the time. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm fantastic on the metrics of that kind of, I'm not Buffett, right? I'm not going to pour over numbers in that way, but I know other people are. And I think there's a lot of value in looking at volume. That's people putting their trades on. That's opinion, that's participation, that's commitment, right? So I want to watch volume. I want to look at the trend on that stock because I really do believe news and fundamentals, including things like it's a good growth company, which is really, frankly, an opinion, right, Kalwant? And cash flow, which is far more objective. But if those things are truly being discounted, if that's truly the driver of the stock, then it's going to be in an uptrend. Then it's going to be above key volume ledges. It's going to then be also above the 200, which this one is. Kalwant, the point of control for 2023, it's support. We're above some key volume ledges. You can see that there. And we're doing battle with the 200 at the moment. So now it's really a matter of, do you want to look at this stock on a daily or on a weekly time frame? If I'm looking longer term, it's going to be weekly. All right. So that's the way I look at it, right? It's not the only way to look at it, obviously. But my job here is always, how am I processing it? What am I looking at? And then take from it what you will, and hopefully it's easy to apply, which is really always what I'm looking for, finding things that are easy to apply. All right, Alicia, where can we look for a good entry back into gold? Yes, we are still in GLD. Arguably yesterday we could have had, and let me just jump on over to the TOS charts, right? Use a little bit of trading view here. Let's jump into some TOS charts here. Okay, so we got into GLD based on some levels on GC futures, which is just a reminder that when I'm playing SPY, QQQ, GLD, USO, TLT, those are all ETFs that have a futures contract that they're associated with. And when I do have that, I'm going to look at the futures contract for what is really a more complete view of what's going on in, for example, gold. And if I like the setup on GC, I can take that idea over to MGC, over to GLD. And at that point, what I can do is focus on setups that would be in agreement with the futures contract, but execute the idea in a more affordable way using oftentimes the option on the ETF. So just a little background there. Yeah, arguably we could have gotten in yesterday or even earlier today on the futures contract for GLD. It's a 9:30 to 4. We're still in this. So we're now looking at T2. My Sector Secrets Mastery folks, we're going to be setting up T2 here, which I believe is going to be hitting this morning. And we will continue to scale with this trade that we are already in. But I'll tell you what, in terms of re-entering, Alicia, in terms of re-entering, let's just look at that gray zone as a buying support level. And why do we want to pay attention to the gray zone? Gang, the wave way below current price action. Do you notice we're not even having a reversion to the mean to the wave? We're not even pulling back to the 21 exponential moving average. So this is really very much dependent on these very active volatility support zones. And if it wasn't for that, there's no way I could engage gold, GLD, MGC, the micro gold to the upside. So it's really that I'm dependent on. So another visit down there would be very good. Yeah, it would be great. Okay, so next up, and by the way, yeah, as far as just a gold related question, Phil asked, what do I think about gold continuing long? I don't look at gold and dollar together. I'm really not that trader. There are moments of correlation between the two, but it's not a high or steady correlation. However, gold does have a steady correlation to real interest rates or real yields, which is the nominal yield of a bond minus the rate of inflation. When that chasm, the difference between those two things narrows, that's bullish for gold. And that's exactly what we're getting as yields are dropping and inflation staying relatively steady. The distance between those things is narrow. Boom, there goes gold to the upside. And I know a lot of this move in gold really was instigated by the rally in bonds when we had the regional bank crisis going on. And gold really hasn't looked back. Gold really hasn't looked back. So I'm going to continue to buy dips in gold. And we'll start looking at miners as well. Newmont is another one that I'm looking at. All right, so let's see. Landon asks, how often am I available in Sector Secrets? How does it work? You only live trade on Wednesdays? Oh gosh, Landon. Yeah, that's probably some it's a great question, and that's some seriously dated intel. So let me give you the deal on when I'm available. So first of all, I guess the best thing to show you would be our room schedule. So no, the very early part of the mastery was very much a Wednesday only thing, but we very much evolved from that, Landon. As the community has grown and traders said, hey, Rog, I want to day trade with you in the morning. Done. We have that every hour. Hey, Rog, what about this short-term swing trading stuff you're doing with the daily price movement ranges? I just took the class. How do I find those trades with you? Done. We do that for nearly almost an hour, 5 days a week. So you'll see the schedule here now. No, it's definitely not a Wednesday only thing. I am in there 5 days a week, multiple hours per day. We also have a tech session with the Lorna bot every Monday. So the learning curve of, Rog, how do I set up that slow stow? And where are the indicators we get free with our Sector Secrets Mastery? And how do I use the HPMR settings? And do I need to do anything there? Lorna bot every hour. Every noon for an hour on Monday, and then the Ask Me Anything session with me every hour on Friday. So yeah, we have a lot of sessions there. Landon, I hope that gives you some detail on where I am and what we're doing. And actually, I'm going to be jumping into the Sector Secrets Mastery Room here actually right now. We're going to start our morning of day trading till about 10:35 Eastern, and then we're going to take a look at our watch list building and swing trading, 1 hour charts, daily charts, and then we wrap it up. So 2 hours, pretty much 2 hours every single morning. And then that's in addition. And then additionally, we have the macro position trades where our book of our position portfolio is looking really nice. It's up quite nicely since we started building it last September. We continue to focus on that. And then we wrap up the week with Ask Me Anything. Hope that helps. All right, gang. I will see you tomorrow, same time, same station. All right. Be good to each other. I'll talk with you soon.